Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at a really interesting conversation about wealth, artificial intelligence, and the future of learning.
Oh, okay.
And it's kind of wild, actually.
Yeah.
One of the people involved in this conversation said that AI is the first technology with absolutely no limits.
Wow, that's a big statement.
Yeah, that's
It
a
really makes you think, what does it even mean for a technology to have no limits? And when you're talking about AI, that's a lot of power.
right. And they get into how AI could completely change education. Like imagine having a personal AI tutor for every student.
That's a pretty amazing thought.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
This all started with a conversation about billionaires.
Oh, the classic debate about wealth inequality. It never seems to go away, does it? It's always interesting to see it pop up when we talk about things like technology and how it could change society.
Yeah, and what's really interesting here is that this wasn't just some theoretical debate. This was a real conversation with humor and everything between a billionaire philanthropist and a popular late-night talk show host.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. So how did they start talking about billionaires?
Well, the host brought up some criticisms of billionaires, and he mentioned a specific politician, someone who believes that billionaires shouldn't even exist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the billionaire guest actually addressed it head on. He talked about how he'd spoken with politicians from both sides about wealth and inequality, even the one the host mentioned.
So he really wanted to hear different perspectives, even the ones that challenged his own position. Did he share his own opinions on the matter?
He didn't really take sides or say he supported one political idea over another, but he did talk about how he believes in paying his fair share in taxes and making the system more progressive. He even joked about how much of his money a certain politician wanted to take.
I love how a little humor can lighten things up, especially when you're talking about serious topics. It makes these discussions feel more relatable.
I know, right? And the host was all about that lightheartedness. At one point, he even jokingly asked about what the perks of being a billionaire are, just in case he ever became one.
I bet our billionaire guest had a good laugh about that. What did you say?
Well, he gave a pretty thoughtful answer, actually. He talked about the obvious perk of being financially secure, which is a huge one, but he also talked about the incredible opportunity it gives you to do charity work.
That makes sense considering how much he and his wife have done for philanthropy. They've dedicated a lot of their wealth to tackling big problems around the world.
Exactly. And he's not alone in that. He and his wife started an initiative that encourages other billionaires to pledge at least 51% of their wealth to philanthropy.
Wow, 51%. That's a huge amount. It makes you wonder what drives people to make that kind of commitment. Is it pure altruism, a sense of responsibility to society, or maybe a bit of both?
That's a good question, and one that deserves its own deep dive someday. But for now, let's move on from billionaires to something else that was a big part of this conversation: artificial intelligence.
Ah, yes, AI. It seems like everyone's talking about it these days. But what makes this interesting is the perspective we get from our billionaire guest. Remember, he said AI is the first technology with no limits.
Exactly. And he had reasons for saying that.
Yeah?
He talked about how AI has the potential to change both blue-collar and white-collar jobs within the next 10 years. He believes AI will significantly disrupt the way we work.
That's a bold prediction. It makes you think about the future of work. Will we see lots of people losing their jobs, or will it lead to new types of jobs?
And our billionaire guest didn't shy away from those questions. He even suggested that governments might need to make big changes to tax policies if AI leads to people working fewer hours.
Fewer working hours. That's
Yeah.
an interesting thought. But it also makes you wonder how people will earn a living if they work less. And what about how it'll change our lives if work takes up less of our time?
You're starting to see how deep this conversation goes. And it wasn't just about economics either. The host brought up some worries about the downsides of AI, too. He was concerned that relying too much on machines could make us lazy thinkers and even hurt our critical thinking skills.
That's a valid concern. We've all seen those sci-fi movies where humans rely so much on technology that they lose basic skills and even their sense of self. But did our billionaire guest agree?
He acknowledged those concerns, but overall he stayed pretty optimistic. He kept emphasizing the good that AI can do, particularly in education and healthcare.
So he sees it as more of a force for good.
Exactly. He even gave some examples like the potential for personalized AI tutors that could support students 24/7 no matter where they're from or their background. And he talked about how AI could help improve healthcare, especially in poor communities and developing countries.
These are some pretty compelling examples. I'm curious to hear how the host reacted to all of this, especially the idea of AI tutors.
Well, he wasn't fully on board, and he actually used a really interesting analogy to explain why.
Oh, I have to hear this. What was the analogy?
He talked about these experiments with baby monkeys. They were given everything they needed to survive, like food and shelter, but they still suffered when they didn't have physical contact and warmth.
I think I see where he's going with this. He's saying that even with all its fancy capabilities, AI can't replace the human connection that's so important for learning and development.
Exactly. There's a powerful point that makes you really think about the nature of education and the role of human interaction.
And I bet our billionaire guest had something to say about that. He did. He agreed that human connection is important, but he argued that AI could actually make those connections even stronger when it comes to education. He said that AI could learn from the best human tutors, like soak up all their knowledge and teaching styles, then make all that expertise available to students all over the world 24/7.
So instead of replacing teachers, he sees AI as a way to help them reach more students.
Exactly. He was imagining a future where AI tutors could give students personalized feedback and support and adjust to each student's learning style and how quickly they learn. This would let human teachers focus on things AI can't do as well, like inspiring creativity, critical thinking, and those important social and emotional skills.
It sounds like he's talking about a totally different way of learning, where technology and human interaction work together to make learning more personal and effective.
And he wasn't just talking about theories. He actually shared his own experience with a really advanced AI chatbot, and he was impressed by what it could do. He seemed pretty convinced that this technology could revolutionize education.
That's pretty cool.
Perfect.
But I'm still thinking about the practical side of it. Could AI tutors really handle the needs of all types of learners? What about students who need more than just help with schoolwork?
Those are good questions, and researchers and educators are working on them right now. But think about the potential benefits. Students who have trouble in a traditional classroom could really thrive with one-on-one attention from an AI tutor. And location wouldn't matter anymore. Anyone with internet access could use these resources.
And imagine being able to learn new things throughout your life. We could have AI tutors helping us learn new skills whenever we need them.
It's a pretty exciting idea. Of course, there's still some hurdles to overcome. We need to make sure AI tutors are developed and used responsibly and think about things like data privacy, algorithmic bias, and making sure everyone has equal access.
And we can't forget about the role of human teachers.
Yeah.
How do we train them to use AI effectively in their classrooms? How do we make sure technology helps their teaching instead of replacing it?
All great points. These are the kinds of things that educators, policymakers, tech experts, and of course, students themselves need to talk about and work together on.
It's clear that AI could change education in both good and potentially challenging ways. We need to think carefully about what that means and make sure AI is developed in a way that benefits all learners.
I agree. And this conversation we've been discussing is a good place to start. It reminds us to think critically about how technology fits into our lives and to be proactive in shaping how it affects us.
Before we finish up, I want to go back to something else that came up in this conversation. They didn't just talk about the future of education. Our billionaire guest also mentioned how AI could be used to help with another important issue, mental health.
Oh, right. He talked about having an AI-powered mental health advisor available all the time. That caught my attention, even though it's just a quick mention.
Me too. Just imagine getting immediate support and guidance whenever you need it, no matter where you are or what time it is. That could be huge, especially for people who have trouble accessing traditional mental health services.
It's a powerful idea. But like with any use of AI, we need to be careful. We have to think about the ethics, make sure people's data is protected, and involve mental health professionals in developing and using these technologies.
Absolutely. But if it's done the right way, AI-powered mental health support could make a big difference in people's lives. It could help reduce the stigma around mental health problems, make it easier for people to get help, and ultimately improve the well-being of millions.
It's exciting to think about the possibilities. And it shows that the conversation about AI goes way beyond just technology. It's about fundamental parts of our lives, like how we learn, how we work, and how we take care of our mental and emotional health.
It reminds us that we can't just look at AI as a separate thing. We need to think about how it affects society as a whole and have open and honest conversations about how we want to shape its future.
I couldn't agree more. And as we go forward, it's important to remember that we're not just watching this happen. We have a choice, we have a voice, and we have a responsibility to help create the future we want.
So let's keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into these complex and fascinating topics. Wow, as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm kind of amazed by the sheer scale of what we've been talking about. It's almost overwhelming to think about how AI could impact every part of our lives.
It really is. We've gone from billionaires and philanthropy to the future of work and education. We even touched on mental health. It's clear that AI isn't just something out of a sci-fi movie anymore. It's happening now, and it's rapidly changing the world.
And you know what strikes me is that there isn't a simple yes or no answer to the question of AI. It's not inherently good or bad. It's a tool. And like any tool, it depends on how we use it.
Absolutely. We can't just blindly accept or reject AI. It's about having these thoughtful discussions like the one we've been having today to figure out the potential benefits and the risks.
And remembering that we all have a say in how AI develops is not just up to the big tech companies or the government. It's about people making informed choices, asking the tough questions, and demanding that these technologies are developed and used responsibly.
I completely agree. We need to be active participants in this conversation, not just sit back and watch it happen. And education is key. The more we understand about AI, the better prepared we'll be to navigate this rapidly changing world.
So to our listeners, we leave you with this final thought-provoking question. What if AI could really provide personalized support in all these areas? We've talked about education, mental health, everything. What would that world look like? What kind of opportunities would it create? And what challenges would we need to face?
Those are questions worth thinking about because the answers could shape our future. And as we've seen today, the future is full of both incredible potential and a huge responsibility.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.